we can begin here. So, just to start, you know, please tell me a little bit about yourself, outside of uni, ideally, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, sure. Like, you want like my actual name or
No,
what?
no, 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 no. Whatever you are the most comfortable kind of telling about yourself, outside of uni, of course.
Okay, so let's see. I'm on the West Coast. I live near Seattle. I'm a mechanical engineer, so that takes up the majority of my time.
Hmm.
Um, and I really like fighting games as a way to get to know people. Like, um, my first experience going to a local was at this vegan bar that is mostly used for punk rock shows that they sometimes hosted Street Fighter tournaments at.
Oh, that's
And I
really
just
cool.
and I just showed up one day, and like the TO, first thing he sees a new face, and he introduces himself. We grab a beer, and like since then I've been kind of hooked with the FGC.
Yeah, that's always one of the cool things about the community. I know I'm a TO locally. Like I helped basically organize the scene for Under Night years ago, and that's kind of transitioned, through ST and Clear and things like that. And meeting new faces and like kind of getting them involved is one of the coolest things about the community, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you have any things that you would consider, as hobbies? You mentioned your job, but
Let's see. Well, um, fighting games would probably be my biggest hobby at the moment, just because I've always liked competition.
Mhm.
But I've kind of just hopped from competitive thing to competitive thing. Like, I was super into sports growing up. Um, did just about every form of competition that my school kind of offered. And though I do like playing other types of games casually, like I always seem to come back to something that's competitive.
Yeah. I was kind of the same way. Like I did sports in high school. I even did like chess in middle school for a little bit. I eventually fell out of those things, but I stumbled onto a group. I actually got in through Smash first. I was a Smash player for a very long time. A lot of things that I did in that arena, but that ended up transitioning into fighting games and Under Night from there. And that
Yeah.
actually leads us into the next question. How did you get into Under Night, and how long have you been playing?
So let's see. I tried out Unil on PC like way back, but I didn't have anyone to play with. So I just kind of messed around with Hilda on in training mode and arcade mode. That didn't really last a whole lot of time, just because Unil at that time I wasn't too deep in the scene, and so I didn't know how to find people that wanted to play the games I wanted to play. And so that ended up being on the back burner up until the release of ST on PS4.
Mm-hmm.
And that, coinciding with it being on Evo, was a pretty big jumpstart for like local players actually trying the game out.
Yes. So you guys are basically a part of the second generation, like the
Absolutely.
Evo announced and things like that. That's always really nice to see. We were really excited to see everybody getting so involved at that time. It was kind of crazy.
Yep. And so that game came out at about the time that I was like completely burning out from Street Fighter V.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still really glad that I played that game. I especially loved the community in Portland for that, but eventually I realized there were just things about that game that just were very much not for me.
Yeah.
And so Under Night was kind of releasing at a really good time for that. And I didn't get super competitive in Under Night for quite a while, because that was around the time that I was graduating college and moving up to Washington. And so at that point, it wasn't really until like the following January that the Under Night scene in Seattle really got big. And that is in large part thanks to Corymon. Big shout outs to her.
Yeah, big shout outs to Corey. She's great.
She is pretty much single-handedly responsible for like hyping up all of the local players to get into this game. Like when she started playing it, like she was bringing it to locals and like just convincing anybody that would listen to play it. And before we knew it, like we were one of the biggest games in the scene.
Okay.
So that is, thanks to that resurgence there with, you know, Corey's involvement, that's when like that's when Undernight became my main game.
Wow, that's super cool. Because I remember kind of seeing Corey talk about it like on Twitter and things like that. And she was streaming so much. We were really excited, at least I was, you know, seeing a new player get in and seeing their enthusiasm. I really wanted to play against, you know, I love playing against new players and players that are getting into the scene. It's like one of the more fun things about the community for me. But we'll kind of like shift gears just a little bit and continuing along the same lines of the previous questions. What in particular do you like the most about Undernight?
I feel like the game really allows me to express myself. Like, there are so many different ways to be playing a lot of the characters. Like Yuzu in particular, I feel like is so flexible in how she can be played that I never run out of stuff to learn, and that is something that keeps me coming back.
Okay. So, continuing kind of down that line, what's been a moment in uni that you like look back on and really either think or speak fondly about?
Feel like I was very, very proud of, I think it was the last CE Otaku, so that was 2019, was the first time I had gotten out of pools at a major.
Oh.
And I was incredibly happy about that. Yeah, I think that was like, of going to an event and having something happen, I think that was the high point for me.
Yeah. I remember it was kind of the same thing for me. My journey was like a little weirder too, because like I had won a tournament regionally. Like I had upset Giuseppe in a tournament. Giuseppe was like a longtime Gourd player, generally considered to be the best Gourd, I think, in the US at the time, like more or less. And then I was like super excited. I went to CE Otaku 2017 and drowned in pools. So like that continued my like trend of like getting 33rd or whatever, like drowning before top 32. Like I don't even remember what the first one I got. It had to have been like Frosty Fausting's 2018 that I got out of pools for the first time. And I ended up top 8ing that one as well. But,
nice.
So I know you mentioned it before, and anybody that happens to follow you on Twitter has to know the character you love the most. But who is your main character, and why did you choose them?
So my main character is Yuzuriha. The reason that I chose her was I was going through a lot of the cast, right, and just looking at like who seemed silly or fun, and I almost gravitated towards Mika because just that the energy you exude when just, you know, running at someone and going for grabs is something I really like. But what ultimately sold me on Yuzu was seeing some uni play of Yuzu doing teleports mid combos, and I just thought to myself that I really want to be able to do that.
Was that like
seeing all of that movement? It just seemed like if I can do that, I would just have a blast.
Was that like the Dragon Ball Z Confirm? I think that's what it's still called. I remember seeing that for the first time and thinking like, man, I kind of want to learn how to play this character. It didn't end up working that way, but...
Yep, exactly that.
Yeah, it was definitely a cool combo. I know you mentioned Mika, but I know Yuzu is a pretty complicated character that takes... Like the more, I feel like every character in the game is like this, but like the more you put into them, the more you get back. But like Yuzu has so many different answers for so many different situations that it takes a lot of energy just to kind of focus on her. But do you happen to have any sub characters?
So thanks to COVID, not really having like majors to go to, I've started to pick up a lot more characters. Probably my best sub at the moment is Merkava. And really, I originally picked him just because I wanted to see if I could do his combos, and then I ended up just really finding that his buttons just feel good to press. So he's definitely, I would say, is my second best character.
Okay. Do you happen to have like a notable tertiary, or do you really just kind of cut it off at Merkava?
I use Lene a lot, but wouldn't say that I really have like a strong Lene. I have like 2 combos with her, and I've mostly bring her out when I'm helping new players get into the game, because even though she can very much gimmick you to death, when the opponent isn't ready, she can also just play just solid grounded uni. And I find Lene to be very good for getting new players into the feel of things. Yeah.
Lene actually was a character that I started with before I went through my journey and ended up playing Akatsuki. Yuzu was another character that I was interested in, but I didn't end up playing her very much. So you actually touched on this question that I'm about to ask you next earlier in the question about like what you like about Uni, but what would you consider to be your playstyle, and how do you think that you are able to express that in this game?
So, I feel like what I try to do most in Uni is control space and tempo. And I think Yuzu is incredibly strong at that. If you are able to be strong enough with her, she can control the pace of the match at any given moment. She kind of decides when things start getting aggressive and when things have to slow down, because she has all of the tools to shut down someone else trying to become aggressive when they shouldn't be yet. So I don't know how else to describe my playstyle, but like, yeah, that is my main goal when I'm playing against people, is I want to enforce my tempo and make them not be fully comfortable with trying to enforce their own.
Yeah. And as someone who has gotten to play even though it's coast to coast, I was definitely feeling that in our games too, because there are definitely some things that I like to try to enforce in the Yuzu matchup, as difficult as it might be. And, it was pretty unique. I think maybe Ryan Hunter was probably the only one, the only other one that I specifically felt this way about, but it was just like, man, it feels like he has a really good sense of my tempo. Like, I'm trying really hard to switch it up and make it creative, but it's like he just has the control over it. It was really enlightening to play against, actually.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. So along that sort of vein, what character matchup do you think is your best matchup, and what makes it your best matchup?
Like, which one I'm strongest against?
Yeah, your personal best. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be your character's best matchup, but like your best matchup.
Let me think on this for a moment.
Take your time.
I would say it's a toss-up between Gordeau and Mika.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, there are a fair amount of Gordeaus over in Pacific Northwest too.
Yeah, Gordeau is a character that a lot of people at least have a pocket that is functional enough. But yeah, I don't know, something about Gordeau, like, yeah, once he scores the hit, he can run his RPS train. But in neutral, I feel like I have a good sense of what of when Gordos want to be trying to use force function, to control that big space with a rusty nail, or when they want to just go in because, they might think that you will respect Reaper or anything else. And so I feel like because of that, I'm pretty strong against Gordo players in general.
Okay. And what about Mika? Because I know you mentioned Mika as well.
Mika, for a similar reason, though, like, she can't make you guess anywhere near as hard as Gord can. So against her, like, in general, I find myself feeling pretty comfortable just kind of down backing and getting a feel for, like, how long until they try to start calling out OSs with their command grab or anything like that. I don't know, like, Mika, she has a lot of tools to be able to kind of get past Yuzu zoning if she commits really hard, but I feel like I'm in general pretty good at knowing when to stop zoning and look for those commitments. And since they are pretty big commitments on Mika's part, as long as I'm not doing what they're supposed to counter, Mika will die.
So, what about matchups that you think that you struggle the most with? What is your weakest considered matchup, and why do you think it's your weakest?
So, my weakest, I want to say, is Seth. And I am not entirely sure if that is just because Stang or Wind God Dude is just in my head, or it's because I just struggle that hard against Seth in general. And I say this because, like, if I run into other Seth players, I generally don't really struggle anywhere near as hard as when I go against Stang. And that man, he for some reason just always knows what I'm thinking, and I don't fully know what to do.
Well, he is, I think, one of the best players in the country right now. As a person who had his Evo run ended by him, and was also beaten domestically, in my own backyard, I lost a tournament to him too in 2 sets. It's hard. He's really strong.
He's a very strong player, but like every time I play him, I feel like I come out a little bit better just because he forces so much adaptation.
Yeah,
but
players like that are really good to push you. I actually feel similarly about Redblade and Foxov. Like, those players really just kind of push you to have to, play up to their level, because if you don't, you just get run over.
Absolutely.
So I kind of mentioned some of my own, but do you have any rivals? And if so, why would you consider them to be a rival of yours?
Let's see. Probably one of my bigger rivals at the moment, I would say, is Troc over on the East Coast, Troc Demon. He is another North American Yuzu, and in my opinion is one of the strongest Yuzus in the continent. I think that I see him as a rival because we have pretty different approaches to how we play our character, but we both are like pretty similar in level at the moment. So I really enjoy like pushing myself to try and keep up with him because he's also constantly improving.
So, and sorry to cut in here. What would you say is the difference kind of between, like, a short summation of the difference between your playstyle and Troc Demon's?
So I play in general a bit of a safer game, whereas Troc is, he gets reads sooner and he's often correct about them. But when he's incorrect, he'll eat it for it.
Yeah.
Which results in us having, pretty similar overall skill level, but it's just very different styles of play. Like, no one calls out like my 171 OS quite like that guy. But when I call out his call out, he'll eat half his life, and then we're back to even.
Yeah, it's one of the stranger phenomenons that I've noticed. Because like typically when you think about coastal scenes in fighting games, I feel like West Coast is like the more aggressive and the more like wild. They're heavier on callouts and reads, where the East Coast is a lot more like defensive and passive. And at least at the top level of the East Coast, I feel like you have a penchant for more aggressive styles of play. Foxov, yep. Redblade, Isaac, those sorts of players are all really fast, up-tempo types of players. Like, it's kind of weird to think about.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I honestly think that the main reason that like I play a slower game than Troc is because I'm surrounded by players that are wanting to play more aggressive, and with how Yuzu functions, if the other person is being really aggressive, you don't turn up your aggression, you just slow down and you do Yuzu things that shut down aggression.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so do you have, like, we just kind of talked about a couple different players, but who are some of the players that you think you would have on your radar? Now, this could mean opponents that you're seeking to fight, or players that you think are underrated or maybe warrant a second look for people who are also not as familiar with the scene.
So this guy, I'm sure you've heard of him, but I don't think the majority of the scene has. And that'd be Shibi1.
Oh, I actually haven't had the chance to watch Shibi that much, but I've seen a couple things. I liked what I've seen about Shibi.
He is an incredibly strong player. He plays Akatsuki, yep. And that how much he switches his playstyle when I play him makes me always very scared to commit to anything. Yeah. He has won a lot of the it's online season thanks to COVID, so we've been doing a lot of events with that combine like Washington and Canada, mm-hmm. And he has topped a lot of the events that we've done. Like a lot of the events end up coming down to like me and him in grand finals, and we definitely go back and forth on who comes out on top. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the scene, like if he's able to travel, we'll start to notice him because his particular Akatsuki playstyle is really cool to watch.
That is really encouraging for me to see, because like I try to watch a lot of Akatsuki, but Shibi's been a player that I actually haven't gotten to see too much footage of. So I think one of the things that I'll do during my break here is to spin up a couple streams and YouTube recordings and take some looks at Shibi. So I'll be relying on you for that one too.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like the set I would probably send your way if I can find it is him versus Redblade, and at one point we used Redblade as a secret boss at the end of the tournament, mm-hmm. And Shibi had won that, so he had to face him, and it was a really cool set to watch. Okay,
it's good to know. So in that same vein, do you have players that inspire your play or players that you look up to?
Definitely Kure in most regards. My only complaint about Kure is he loves to style on people. Mm-hmm. He will sometimes either go for straight meta combos, or he'll just go for hyper optimized stuff when like the basic B&B would kill. So sometimes it hurts my soul watching him like be about to win a set, drop a combo because he went for way too hard of a route, and then have it be turned around on him. Mm-hmm. But ignoring that part, I really like just his playstyle in general. I think he does an incredible job of changing his tempo to match the opponents, and his defensive skills especially are something that I want to be able to incorporate into my game, just because I feel like my defense, like once I'm blocking, is where I'm weakest.
Yeah. I know for me, the Kansai group, which is, Clear Lamp, Kure, Hishigata, Nishine, Kyo is kind of in that same area. Those players have been big inspirations for me. Like, back when Athena videos used to be up all the time, I just remember combing through hours of Clearlamp versus Kure, Hishigata versus Kure, Hishigata versus Clearlamp. Like, those players are definitely the ones that helped inspire me the most. You know, kind of speaking about it reminds me of a conversation I had with Clearlamp, where he was like I asked him, who do you feel like is the strongest player in the world? And, you know, maybe it's a bit of a loaded question because I'm asking Clearlamp that, right? Like, he's won like so many events, won the largest event for Under Night in history, and he said Kure. He's like, Kure is the strongest player in Japan. Kure is the strongest player. And that really just kind of stuck with me. I kind of lament because I ended up falling in losers to Waterloo Hilda, aka JCT, one round before I got to fight Kure for the first time. So I would have liked to see and experience that Yuzu myself, but I didn't get a chance to. It's a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. But you know, we've talked about tournaments and things like that, but we've basically lost a year because of COVID-19. But I know that you are one of the players that's kind of stayed invested. What do you think has helped you the most maintain your interest in the game?
I think it's just that we've had a lot of local involvement in terms of like making sure that there's consistent competition happening. Ash, otherwise known as the EFGC dad, has been hosting tournaments consistently that involve Alberta, BC, and Washington. So that has really helped a lot, just because having a tournament where you're guaranteed a certain level of stable connection with everyone makes, you know, it gives you a reason to kind of keep grinding.
Yeah, I've definitely popped into a couple of those streams too. You know, as I came through the end of my current Scholastic journey, I haven't quite had the time to watch as much as I would like, but I definitely have kept my eye on what's been going on out there. You guys are probably one of the highlights of Under Night in, you know, this year, I think. So it's definitely cool to see what you guys have been doing out there.
Yeah, and besides just having tournaments to want to grind for, I genuinely have fun finding stuff that I can't pull off quite yet, and then figuring out how I can get there.
Yep.
And even if it means, you know, grinding ranked, knowing I'm going to eat a lot of losses because I'm refusing to use teleports or anything like that, I feel like if you don't care too much about wins when you're just playing online, you can absolutely get a ton of improvement.
Yeah, it's more about the process than, you know, whatever the online result is or anything like that. I've kind of found it that way as well. Like, Yuzu has been like a sore point for me, obviously. It's a difficult matchup for Akatsuki. But, you know, I've talked to you and I've talked to Mo, and I think there have been a couple shifts in my understanding that has helped me play the matchup a little bit better. So, you know, things like that have personally been ways that I maintain my own interest in the game. You know, the Akatsukis have been kind of grinding at combo structure a lot, so there's like a lot of new routes, damage, and whatnot being added. I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those combo trials are insane. I love watching those.
Yeah, they're super fun. They were really fun to do. And I'm kind of lamenting because, like, I found out a couple things later that I could add as a trial, but I've been pretty adamant about ending the trial at 17, you know, because of the namesake and whatnot.
Yeah.
But, I guess enough about that real quick, but do you have any goals that you find yourself working towards currently? Like, any specific sort of goals, I would say?
No real goals at the moment, just because since there's no majors to be looking forward to, like, in the near future, I just keep, you know, taking on small goals, like when I'm in this situation, you react with these options. And I just kind of keep doing really tiny things like that. And every now and then I will just go weeks at a time where I just, don't even bother with improving and just play the game and have fun, because it can't be all grinding all the time.
Yeah. I've basically done the same myself. I know I kind of talked about it on my stream a bit, but for example, one of the moves that I've been trying to implement the most for Akatsuki is 2-2A, and like very, very delayed 2-2A, because 2-2A has head involve from frame 1, dive involve from frame 1, throw involve from frame 1. So, if it's used properly, it's among one of the best anti-airs in the game. You can do it extremely late if you have meter, that translates into a combo and things like that. So that is a part that I think can help cover for some weaknesses in other parts of my game, because it's surprisingly difficult to anti-air with Akatsuki sometimes. 6C can be unreliable. Force function requires a bit of timing. There's like a weird dead zone between far 5C and close 5C, and close 5C doesn't have head involve. So you have to be pretty particular with like the types of things that you anti-air with. Focusing on 2-2A might allow me to allocate some of the other like mental resources if I can get that involved in my gameplay. But that's just one such example for me.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially with like, since it's a 2-2 motion, you can like somewhat safely be sneaking in the buffer mid block string.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are there any like moves like that you've kind of focused on? I want to say like just through playing your usage of like the short slashes, which are the 6X series from Yuzu, has probably been the most innovative that I've seen of any Yuzu. Like, I've played a lot of Yuzus, but your usage of that was like really new to me. I was like, oh man, I didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, it's my usage of 6X there's been a ton of experimenting with that for sure. I sometimes go back and forth on how much I should be using them, because like the pushback is nice, and the being able to confirm off them isn't too horrible if I'm ready for it. But let's see, I would say that like what I've been focusing on being able to use better lately has been her 6-6B. Being 9-frame forward advancing move makes for very strong Abare as long as like the points where a person is very likely to do like a no cancel or a rebeat. And it's an incredibly strong starter and covers a lot of options if I can do it right. So being able to use that as something that I've definitely been working on.
Yeah,
and
that's really interesting, because I know Yuzu doesn't necessarily have the fastest frame data. I know like things like 2B are pretty useful. Obviously 5C is like a relatively good space control. It also serves as kind of her anti-ROS. But I actually didn't know that 6-6B was 6. I just kind of assumed it was around 11 or something.
No.
Or
6-6
9,
is
rather.
9. Yeah,
9,
it's 9 frames.
Yeah, 9. I thought it was around like 11 or 12, but I was incorrect about that.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about it is on counter hit, it does a knockdown. So like even on trades, you can pick up.
Ooh,
that's a huge part of why it makes for really strong Abare, is because you don't have to be completely correct. You just have to be mostly.
I'll have to keep that in mind personally, as I continue to develop my anti-Yuzu offense. Gotta keep that one in mind too.
The only bad thing about it is it's only special cancelable. So like as soon as she does that, she's in stance, and you can somewhat call out what she might do to then try and be safe. But I mean, it's Yuzu. She obviously has tons of options out of stance, so that's mostly on the opponent to be able to make the right call.
Yeah. Okay. So we've actually come toward the end of our questioning. So to end us out, please give us some places to see your content or to follow you out, or if you have some shout outs that you'd like to make, please feel free to do them now.
I mean, you can follow me at Ruric. It's with a 1 instead of an I. Same thing for Twitch, but I mostly just use it to stream our local events. I don't do too much personal streaming. For shoutouts, just the local scene, there's just a lot of players that just have kept up the grind throughout the entirety of it. Like just earlier today, I was playing with Riddle, who is an Ori player who I keep going back and forth with. So shoutouts to him. Shoutouts to Yuzu Chat because they're responsible for the majority of the combos that I have. I've stolen almost all of them from there. Yeah, and really just shoutouts to Dennis for helping me with almost every event that I've wanted to do for uni. He's just always there with a ton of support. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you for your time, and thank you for agreeing to speak with me. I know it's a little bit of short notice that I gave you, but I'm glad that you decided to participate.
Yeah, it was fun. Okay. Thanks for having me.